Welcome to Biohackers webinar. I'm your host, Teemu Arina, and today we will be diving deep into optimizing nutrition.
Fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin D, that's the most important fat-soluble vitamin, and it's basically a pro-hormone. It's like a hormonal-like substance. The UVB rays from the sun, you get it from there, and the liver is making that, and it's going to the kidneys to change it to the active form, like the calcitriol. And then we have vitamin D receptors all over the cells, so those receptors need to function properly. Of course, you can get it a little bit from the nutrition, but the form is usually vitamin D2, when it's actually what you need is vitamin D3 and the calcitriol form of it. But the research is very exhaustive, preventing different diseases. You have the list over there. Basically, that's the most important vitamin there is. And let's go through some factors that increase the absorption and the concentration of vitamin D, because it's not usually enough that you take vitamin D, because there are so many things that could go wrong. Like you could be genetically, you would need more, and if you're not measuring it, how do you know how much you need? What about the other cofactors that you actually need there? But as a reminder, the UV radiation in the midday sun, you only need about 15 to 20 minutes to get a proper load of vitamin D synthesis in the body. Of course, you don't want to burn yourself, you don't want to overdo it, but that's the best way to get vitamin D. But you also need adequate vitamin A intake and its concentration in the blood. So these two vitamins, they kind of function hand in hand. If you have a low vitamin A, you first want to fix that. Then these long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, they increase the amount of vitamin D receptor and promote their function. So amping up the intake of omega-3 fatty acids, the long-chain ones, also will help vitamin D function in the body and especially get into the cells. Also, you need magnesium. So if you have suboptimal levels of magnesium, you want to fix that to make the vitamin D more into the active form, and it's also helping to transport the vitamin D in the body. What about optimal levels? I haven't seen any official recommendations for optimal levels, but I have seen some studies, for example this one, which states optimal vitamin D supplementation levels for cardiovascular disease protection. So it's a huge thing, because that's one of the leading causes of death in the whole world. So that's the optimal concentration, at least based on this study, to prevent cardiovascular disease. If you want to have bone health effects of vitamin D3, you need vitamin K2. It's helping the calcium absorption, bone resorption, and calcium reabsorption. Here are the effects that vitamin K2 has for bones and blood vessels. Both are highly important. So this is kind of like directing calcium inside the body. You definitely do not want calcium in your arteries or like the blood vessels. You want into the bone. So MK7 is especially needed for the formation of osteocalcin, which is a hormone and improving bone regeneration and in general like the energy production. And the intake of MK4 and MK7 should be at least 50 micrograms per day. And this effectively prevents the calcification of blood vessels. But I don't think that's enough for optimal bone health. So you should aim at least for 200 micrograms per day. And the best sources are long-ripened cheeses, tempeh, natto, and egg yolk. So if you're not getting any of these in your diet, you definitely would want to consider taking a vitamin K2 supplement. And in the course, I'm definitely going to go deeper than this into this particular subject. So vitamin K2 is highly fascinating fat-soluble vitamin. Some people mix vitamin K1 and vitamin K2. Vitamin K1 is especially needed for blood clotting and preventing blood clots, but it's actually also needed for bone formation. So you need also a little bit of vitamin K1. And the sources are totally different. Vitamin K is mostly abundant in leaf greens, and as we have gone through, the MK4, MK7, and there's also like other forms of vitamin K2 like MK9, and they are usually found in fermented foods. But if you do not tolerate fermented foods, let's say you have like high histamine intolerance, then you might just want to consider having a good supplement of vitamin K2. And regarding supplementation, I will also go through the best possible supplements in my opinion and based on my research and the quality of the products in the specific module for each week inside the course. Then we have vitamin A. As I mentioned, it's highly critical to have also good levels of vitamin A. You don't want to have too much of it because it might be liver toxic, but usually if you balance vitamin D and A, it's never a problem. And of course, we can get it from animal sources like liver, and it's in a different form, and vegetable sources like in carrots, it's carrot and beta carotene form, and that's actually stored in the liver. And the retinol is kind of like the active form of the vitamin A, and then we have different forms in the downstream of the metabolism like retinol, retinoic acid, and then the elimination. But as you can see from the other image on the right, it has some multiple effects like systemic effects throughout the body, important for thyroid, the pancreas, bone formation, different cellular receptors, skin health, a big one, definitely also very much needed for the immune system, but also for the HPA axis, which is like the stress controlling axis. So you need vitamin A, I would say, all over the body. So make sure you get enough of vitamin A, and of course, you should always measure the levels. Then let's jump into the water-soluble vitamins. It's of course vitamin C and all of the B complex vitamins. I think vitamin C is something everybody knows. It's probably the most used supplement. It has a lot of different effects in the body. The antioxidant effect is of course one of the most important ones, especially intracellular. So it's preventing oxidation of fatty acids, and also different kind of effects in the absorption of different B vitamins. But the most important effects are collagen synthesis, connective tissue support, bones, tendons, joints, and other tissues. In the course, I will dive really deep in this, but this is something that people always ask, hey, is there a difference in the supplemental forms of vitamin C? And all of these work. Ascorbic acid, which is like the basic synthetic form, really cheap, it works. Then we have the sodium, calcium ascorbate, ascorbic acid plus bioflavonoids. That's maybe a little bit better one. Then we have like ester C, that's calcium ascorbate, and dehydroascorbate. That's usually if you have some gut issues taking ascorbic acid, so ester C might be helpful. And then it's my favorite, which is liposomal vitamin C, very highly absorbable form of vitamin C, and it's actually improving the intracellular levels of vitamin C. And it's usually also absorbing slowly or raising the levels in the blood more in a constant way. Then we have a fat-soluble form, and that's called ascorbyl palmitate. So all of these work. It depends on the situation, what you want to do about it. Best food sources for vitamin C. So in the course you will get these kind of lists for every possible vitamin, mineral, fatty acid, you name it. Camu camu, really good one, and parsley, paprika, horseradish, seaberry, blackcurrant, broccoli. So where is orange? Usually people say, hey, drink orange juice and you get a lot of vitamin C. Well, not really. Yeah, there's some vitamin C, but there's more sugar than vitamin C. So definitely at least do not go crazy with orange juice to get your daily dose of vitamin C. I'm going to go through the basic functions of B vitamins. There's of course thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, pyridoxine, folate, biotin, cobalamin. And these are all needed in the body. They are essential. They're water soluble except for vitamin B12. We have a storage in the liver, and it might actually last something like as much as 20 to 30 years even. B vitamin has certain impact on the human body, but all B vitamins interact with each other in certain ways. So that's maybe if you take B vitamins, taking a bioavailable B complex could be a good idea. But if you have certain deficiencies, let's say you're deficient in thiamine, then of course supplementing with only that would be wise. But if you're not measuring the levels, then it might be hard to know, hey, if I'm getting like enough of this, or am I getting like too much of this. In many supplements, the amounts are really high. Those may not be useful. They may be useful if you're like highly stressed, you have some kind of disease, and the need for B-complex vitamins is highly increased. Then having like huge amounts of those might be beneficial. All B vitamins take part in the cellular energy production, and they also act as antioxidants and participate in the formation of red blood cells, ensure normal functioning of the nervous system. Other functions are methylation, estrogen metabolism, and so on. The best sources are organ meats, chicken eggs, red meat, nutritional yeast if you're like vegetarian or vegan, then dark green vegetables and herbs, a good source for folate, legumes, avocado, and of course seafood. In the course, and especially on the lectures on these water-soluble vitamins, it's almost an hour lecture, and I will go in a nitty-gritty detail through every possible nutrient. But here's an example, like folate. It's a very important one, and I want people to know that, hey, if you're taking folic acid, that might not do anything good for you. You might be in the need for actually the bioavailable, bioactive form, which is folate, because you could have MTHFR gene mutation, which is pretty common. Maybe like 35%, actually it's 60% and 35% have the homozygote, so they have both alleles in the gene. So they actually could get worse with folic acid. So I always recommend going for the bioavailable form, which is in this case like methylfolate or something like bioactive folate. This has a lot of different effects in the body, like nucleic acid precursors, several amino acid methylation reactions. The methylation is probably like one of the most important ones, and folate participates in this one carbon metabolism. So you can see in the image that it's also very important if you have elevated homocysteine levels to lower those ones. And in the babies, essential for normal growth, and especially the brain development, the neural tube development. So that's why women, they should take folate, not folic acid in my opinion, but go for folate. And the best way to ensure your optimal levels is to measure that one. Severe folate deficiency causes this thing called megaloblastic anemia. So you don't want to be deficient of that. As I mentioned previously, the best food sources for folate are leafy greens, but also different livers. So liver is, if you eat animal foods, it's a nature's multi-nutrient. You could eat liver, let's say, once a week, or take high quality liver capsules, but also you manage at least in the folate part with just using these leaf greens, dark green leaf greens, parsley, common nettle, spinach. You don't want to eat too much raw spinach because of oxalate risk, but if you like cook it a little bit, then it usually goes at least to a minimal amount. And if you're not taking or getting enough folate, there might be some kind of reasons. It might not be absorbed, or the need for folate is increased if you're using a lot of alcohol, smoking tobaccos, cigarettes, if you have celiac disease, IBD, or if you have high homocysteine levels. So usually the old folate is used to actually metabolize that. So the body is really wise. It uses the things it has available, but if it doesn't have available, then, that's a problem. Next, we go to the week 3, which is minerals and microelements. This is also a huge week, huge chapter. So as you can see, there's a lot of material going in the first few weeks in the form of videos, lectures, but also in the written form in the course platform. A lot of different minerals: calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and sodium chloride. And then we have secondary minerals, which are iron, zinc, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, iodine, chromium, copper, silicon, and boron. A lot of stuff there, and they're all very critical for the human body. We need all of these. And again, measuring these ones, for example, I noticed that if I'm not supplementing with selenium, I'm not getting into the optimal amounts. I don't like Brazil nuts that much, which is the best source for selenium. So I supplement it here and there. And copper was also the other one that I supplement every now and then. But for example, for copper, you can get it easily from, let's say, if you like cashew nuts, you don't want to go crazy about this. But also dark chocolate, high levels of copper in those, on that. And of course, liver, very high in copper. But yeah, I will go through two of the most important ones, in my opinion, which are calcium and magnesium. And there's a lot of calcium in the body, like almost 1 kilogram of calcium, and most of them is in the bones and the teeth. And it's very difficult to get an overdose from food, but if you take a lot of calcium supplements, then it's possible, totally possible to get too much calcium, and especially if you're not getting enough magnesium and enough vitamin K2, so the calcium actually could cause some problems, even predisposing to cardiovascular disease. So beware not using too much of the calcium supplements, or if you are, always supplement with magnesium and vitamin K2 and vitamin D. If you are deficient in the calcium, you are predisposed to osteopenia, and if it's going on, then the osteoporosis, which is actually a bone disease. But you also might get blood clotting disorders, fatigue, hypertension, even type 2 diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, and arrhythmias. So, very important one there. And this is an interesting one. Adequate potassium intake together with calcium reduces calcium excretion into the urine and therefore can improve the utilization of calcium in the body. So having enough potassium from the diet, also very important for the physiological effects of calcium in the body. Remember that one. How do you measure calcium, like the nutritional intake? Well, the thing is that you really don't. The calcium levels in the blood, they tell almost nothing about the body's calcium reserves, and because they're in the bones. For this purpose, especially when getting older, I would recommend to do this kind of a DXA scan to measure the bone density. So there you can actually see if you have a good bone density. Usually it means, hey, maybe you have enough calcium. Usually that's the case. About the supplements, calcium carbonate, that's very common. It has 40% of the calcium element itself, and it's okay in the absorption, maybe 27% absorption rate. And if you take calcium supplements, you should be taking with the food or shortly after it to maximize the absorption. As a reminder, again, take calcium always with vitamin D and vitamin K2. Best food sources: should you drink liters of milk per day? Definitely not. You might actually cause some problems, and these we cover in the course. Is milk bad for you? I'm not answering it here, except for the answer is probably yes. And it's not about lactose, but many other things. And it's not even the best source of calcium. And the better sources are, if you tolerate these hard cheeses, you almost get 1,000 milligrams per 100 grams. So that's hands down one of the best sources, or the best source for calcium there is. And we have seaweed, dried kombu, whey protein, really good source. Again, nettle, sardines, some other fish in general, pretty good source for calcium. Goat cheese, almonds, and Wendy's. And different kind of factors predispose to calcium deficiency. Of course, if you have a low calcium diet, if you're deficient in vitamin D, magnesium, you're alcoholic, you're going through menopause, that's also something to be taken into consideration. And certain drugs I would highlight here, corticosteroids, so they usually cause a lot of problems in the bones and also in the calcium metabolism. We have also silicone, especially like for teeth and bone. Boron, really important micromineral. Vitamin C, copper, zinc, and manganese. So these all actually function hand in hand. And here is really nice preferred supplementation. Of course, this is like the author's opinion about this, but I think it's pretty good. If you would want to supplement, you would want to go around something like this. Of course, getting from the diet, always better. But let's say you take a multivitamin and you have some bone problems, you might check this table. Then we have magnesium. I would say this is my favorite mineral because there's so many things that magnesium does, and it has helped me a lot in terms of recovery, sports performance, brain health, energy metabolism, and so on. But it's basically participating in over 300 enzymatic reactions, it's coenzymes, and it's all over the place. And if you take too much calcium, it might actually cause magnesium deficiency. So balancing the calcium and magnesium intake, it's highly beneficial. The optimal intake has been found in several studies to be one of the most important factors in preventing coronary artery disease. So that's a really big one. So that this is something you definitely want to take enough. And the calcium-magnesium ratio from the food and supplements included in total should be around 2:1. So a little bit more calcium than magnesium, maybe around double or a little less. Magnesium deficiency then again can predispose to calcium deficiency. The optimal intake for magnesium is anything between 6 to 10 milligrams per kilogram per day. So let's say you're an athlete, you weigh 100 kilos, you actually might want to get 1,000 milligrams of magnesium per day. This is not to say that you should take all of this from supplements, of course, like getting it from food. It's also very important, but you might want to aim for that, at least for 6 milligrams per kilogram per day. The mild deficiency of magnesium has increased significantly during the last decades. So this is something that's bubbling under there. People are not getting enough magnesium. So supplementation, that this would be one of my go-to supplements. Besides vitamin D, magnesium would be the other one. And they will also work hand in hand. Too little intake of magnesium linked to vitamin D deficiency, and because the magnesium promotes the synthesis of vitamin D from sunlight in the skin. Best foods. Many people say, hey, I don't know actually which foods contain magnesium. And many of the foods are nuts, seeds, but of course there's dark chocolate. We have hemp seeds, Brazil nuts, almonds, pine nuts, oat bran, and from animal side we have salmon and roast beef. So there is magnesium, at least a little bit in animal products. But if you're not eating a ton of nuts and seeds, which I would not recommend doing, like maybe a handful a day maximum, you should probably supplement or at least measure the optimal levels on your side for the magnesium. And if you're having any of these things, IBD, celiac disease, you're having chronic diarrhea or diabetes, or if you're alcoholist, chronic alcoholism, or if you're just aging and you're not eating a nutrient-dense diet, or if you're an athlete and doing a lot of sports, then the intake for magnesium is definitely increased. And we move to fatty acids, which is the week 4 of the Optimizing Nutrition online course. And let's go through the basic fat and fatty acids 101 key takeaways. So it is very important source for energy for everybody. That's why ketogenic diets work so well when your metabolism is attuned with burning fat for energy. It is really effective and you have it stored. You can get it from food easily. And of course, they are needed for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and carotenoids, which are fat-soluble as well. And about the composition, it's mainly composed of triglycerides, almost like 98%. And a triglyceride molecule consists of 1 glycerol, like the backbone, and 3 fatty acids. And there are different forms of fatty acids, and that's what we cover in the course. And of course, there are different phospholipids and sterols, which in the cell walls, and so on. And dietary fats, such as triglycerides, phospholipids, and sterols, they are used in the body as they are hydrolyzed to fatty acids by digestive enzymes produced by pancreas, and they are absorbed in the small intestine. And bile is definitely needed, that the liver produces bile and it's stored in the gallbladder, and it's making these emulsified fat droplets. And in the course I will go systematically through every possible fatty acid available and needed for the human body. The fatty acids can be divided into short chain fatty acids, which have under 6 carbons. They are produced by the gut. The good bacteria produce these, and they usually feed the cells in the colon, but also they might feed the liver and the kidneys. We have butyrate acetic acid, propionate, and so on. Then we have MCTs, which are 6 to 12 carbons. They're usually found in coconut oil or coconut and palm oil. And these are very effectively converted into ketones. So that's why people use these medium chain triglycerides to give immediate energy. And then we have long chain fatty acids. There are 13 to 21 carbon atoms. And they can be divided into monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids. And different kind of effects and found in different sources of foods. How to make this as simple as possible. What does a saturation mean? The saturation degree of fatty acids depends on the possible double bonds between the carbon chains. So they can be either saturated, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated. So they have 1, 2, or 3 or more of these double chains. And if the fat is saturated, it's very stable. It's not easily broken down. It tolerates heat very easily, and that's why it's very good for frying food. Fatty acids, they can be also classified as essential and non-essential fatty acids. They affect the cell signaling in the body and alter gene expression in fat and carbohydrate metabolism. So they're also functioning as these signaling molecules in the body. So fatty acids, they have a wide variety of function in the body, and depending on their structure, they have a different function. There are certain essential fatty acids, and from these, basically all other fatty acids can be made, but it's not that effective. These need to be obtained from the dietary sources. So if you take a look at the slide, these two are the short-chain fatty acid. It's an omega-3 one. It's called alpha-linoleic acid, or ALA. And this should actually say long-chain omega-6 fatty acids. It's called linoleic acid, or LA. And that's something people usually get a lot from the diet. And the bad thing is that people get it way too much. And it might cause a lot of problems like chronic inflammation in the system. The human body can produce other fatty acids from these essential fatty acids, as you can see, but that's not optimal for optimal nutrition. But why EPA and DHA are so important are they are further transformed into these kind of resolvins, protectins, and neuroprotectin D1, so they lower inflammation, they lower the risk for cardiovascular disease, so that's why there's so much hype about fish oil, omega-3s, and that's why it's kind of like a wild west in the supplementing side, and there's all kinds of omega-3 supplements. You actually might not get any benefit if they're oxidized, you might get more harm from taking those, so in that sense, concentrating on the high quality, if you are going to supplement with fish oil or like this cod liver oil, go for very high quality that is not being oxidized at all. I would like to highlight unsaturated fatty acids. The most important ones are palmitoleic acid, it has 16 carbons, oleic acid, 18 carbons, and this thing called ketoxanic acid, which has 17 carbons. And around 90% of the oleic acid is present in dietary sources. So that is the most important monounsaturated fatty acid. Remember this, oleic acid. And as I measured these fatty acid profiles from hundreds of people, usually people do not get enough of oleic acid. And the extra virgin olive oil is absolutely the best source for this. The oleic acid, it's also acting as a building block of cell membranes, especially in the myelin sheaths of nerves. And they seem to improve also the blood cholesterol levels and possibly even prevent the development of coronary heart disease. So that's why it is so important. And I've seen a couple of research papers about the specific effects of extra virgin olive oil regarding the Mediterranean diet, and it seems that it is the single most important factor in the diet when you think about preventing cardiovascular disease. So that is the reason I'm highlighting it here. So for many it's beneficial to increase the intake of monounsaturated fatty acids and at the same time to reduce the intake of saturated fatty acids and carbohydrates. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat any saturated fats. because that's definitely not the case. I eat that also quite a bit, but I've definitely increased when I've gone through this literature years ago, my olive oil intake and reduced a little bit of the saturated fat intake. So that seems to be good, at least for my genetics. So you can actually have gene test recommendations based on that. And especially extra virgin olive oil, or EVOO, it lowers silent inflammation. That's the number key killer regarding cardiovascular disease. Elevated silent inflammation has multiple benefits in the brain as well, cognitive functions, and it's cardiovascular protective. And in the course, I have nitty-gritty details in my lecture about different forms of olive oil. Why should you go like for unfiltered ones? For example, it has 10 times the polyphenols that like the regular extra virgin olive oil has. So all these kind of cool details. And regarding antioxidants, now we go into the part 5, antioxidants. As the name says, they fight against oxidative stress in the body. And this is what we have covered in the course. We don't have all of the antioxidants because it's a vast space of different kind of chemicals, but the most important ones like carotenoids, we have coenzyme Q10, different phospholipids, choline, inositol, betaine or TMG, NAC, alpha-lipoic acid, glutathione, taurine, curcumin, green tea, resveratrol, flavonoids and polyphenols, and so on. And of course, the measurements, how you can actually measure if your body has oxidative stress, that's a really good measurement to take. And also, what is the plasma's antioxidant capacity in your body? And yeah, here's a good quote. The main purpose of antioxidants when obtained from food is to balance oxidation reduction reactions at the cellular level and prevent excessive oxidative stress. We need oxidative stress in the body. If you're just like hammering down too much antioxidants, that's also a problem. But if you're not getting any of it, that's a bigger problem. So antioxidants lower oxidative stress. Simple as that. And as you can probably deduct from the image behind this statement, the more color there is in your diet, the more natural antioxidants you will have. So, hey, what about carnivore diet? Yeah, I don't think it's sustainable in the long term. You're probably gonna miss something. You're gonna miss at least the polyphenols. I picked up one antioxidant here for this lecture, and that's glutathione, which is the master antioxidant of the body. And it's consisting of 3 amino acids. And the body is synthesizing glutathione from cysteine, glutamic acid, and glycine. And usually the ones that we need the most are glycine and also some form of cysteine. Let's say like in the form of N-acetylcysteine. And these two together are really powerful in improving the glutathione levels in the body. But the glutathione, what the heck is that? It's a tripeptide, like 3 amino acids in there. And it functions both as an oxidant and also as a reducing agent. So it depends, it's kind of like mastering the redox oxidation balance in the body. So in this way, we have these genius mechanisms in the body that always try to bring us into the homeostasis. But the glutathione levels then be depleted or reduced if the oxidative stress in the human body is very high, if the plasma's antioxidant capacity is greatly reduced. And if you have a decreased dietary intake of any of these amino acids, it can lead to the inadequate formation of glutathione. How to increase glutathione? There are different things, of course, you could take glutathione, like liposomal glutathione itself, but I usually recommend that you go for the precursors, and as I've mentioned before, N-acetylcysteine, also vitamin C improves that, glutamine, taurine, there's even curcumin, and consumptive liver, and this herb or called milk thistle, alpha-lipoic acid, and so on. So yeah, my favorite ones of these are definitely N-acetylcysteine and glycine. So should you take like basic pill form glutathione? Usually it's not that effective. It might have some effects, but definitely if you want to supplement with glutathione, go for the liposomal form. The other thing from the antioxidant side I want to go through is the flavonoids and polyphenols. So these polyphenols are a large family of natural chemical substances, and they are in many plants and berries. The more color there is, usually the more polyphenols there are. So they basically protect the plant from UV radiation, different kind of animals, microbial infections, and they promote the normal growth process. So flavonoids and polyphenols, they also enhance the gut microbiota. If you eat a lot of different colors and plants in your diet, you're probably going to get a lot of these polyphenols, and they have a lot of beneficial effects. And especially flavonoids, they have been shown to have significant anti-inflammatory effects in the body. And in the course material, we go through all of these different forms like anthocyanins, flavonols, and isoflavonols, and what are the best sources and where do you find these. So you can easily just build a diet that's appropriate for your needs and your lifestyle. This is a list of the best food sources for polyphenols. Different kind of colorful berries are there, like chokeberry, but we also have like raw cocoa powder. So raw chocolate, really good one. Blueberries, bilberries, different kind of berries, cranberries, berries in general. And of course we have lentils, even legumes, red cabbage, kale, and so on. All of these comprehensive lists are found in the course. And yeah, coffee. It also has some polyphenols. So that's probably one of behind the reasons of its health benefits. So it's not caffeine per se, which might have some benefits, but usually is due to the coffee's polyphenols. Let's have a breather and go to the last part of this webinar and lecture. They are amino acids and carbohydrates. So this is also the last part of the course. The key takeaways: what are amino acids and why should you care about these? Well, they are basically the building blocks of life for different kind of proteins, and they occur naturally in organic or carbon-containing compounds. 20 amino acids are important for humans, and 9 of them are essential, so they must be obtained from dietary sources. The remaining 11 non-essential, they can be synthesized by the body, but of course you will get these also from the diet. And these 20 amino acids, they are proteinogenic, so that means they are turned into proteins that are essential for the body. So they form proteins. Amino acids make up all the proteins needed in the body. And there's different kind of functions for different systems, enzymes, and so on. And non-proteinogenic amino acids, they act as brain neurotransmitters in the body, and they are involved in the urea cycle. So they are also very important ones. And if you're going deficient in proteins and especially amino acids, it can lead to actually various diseases. Here's this interesting slide about the exchange between tissue proteins and free amino acids. You have this free amino acid pool, and it's either secreted going to oxidation on non-protein pathways, or it's going to the tissues for building the tissue protein. It's used for energy in the body as well. So that's also kind of like this reserve mechanism. But you wouldn't want that you're actually burning your muscles for energy. So the protein could be lost via skin, hair, and also the feces. So this is a constant exchange of different amino acids and the pool. My favorite one is Puhdistamo Finnish brand. It has this optimal EAA. And why it's optimal, it has this master amino acid pattern that's absorbing at least 99% of that. So they actually contain 8 of these 9 essential amino acids, because based on some studies, histidine can actually be made, and the levels of histidine are elevated when you ingest these other 8 essential amino acids. They are needed for different kind of functions in the body. Let's take leucine, which is the key amino acid in muscle protein synthesis, growth, and repair. But it's also elevating insulin levels in the body. It's also activating this mTOR signaling in the body. Then we have isoleucine and lysine. These are branched chain amino acids, and they are also these kind of anabolic amino acid, also taking part of regulating blood sugar and energy production. And lysine is for the collagen formation, and so on. So these 9 are needed for the body for different kind of functions. Why use these? What are possible benefits? Well, they improve appetite control. They improve cognitive function. They improve sleep quality and metabolic health, red blood cell production, blood sugar control, glycogen store replenishment, and also muscle tissue maintenance, especially if you're doing fasted workouts or you're on a hypocaloric diet, you want to lose weight. So these EAs will definitely help you maintain muscle mass. So they clearly increase protein synthesis and nitrogen balance. This means better recovery. Best sources, basically all animal foods, but especially game meat like elk, bison, reindeer, different kind of animal proteins, fish, eggs. Then we have some Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and then some vegetable or vegetarian sources like lentils, beans. And if you combine rice protein and pea protein, you get this perfect combination of different amino acids. And of course, whey protein, really good one for that. Do you want to aim for the optimal intake, which is your current optimal nutrient intake that helps you to stay in the best possible health? I would recommend this Metabolomics Plus test. So this one is something I would recommend if you want to actually know your functional need. So for example, if your intake for, let's say, vitamin A is increased or vitamin C, and it's also measuring all kinds of things regarding your energy metabolism, different kind of neurotransmitters, even gut health markers. So this is a very wide spectrum test that I would recommend you take. In the course, for every possible nutrient, I have different kind of lab tests, different reference ranges, and also possible optimal ranges if they are in the science literature being recommended or validated. So here's the standard curve, standard deviations, and you would want to at least be in the reference range, like the 1 sigma to -1 sigma to +1 sigma, even aim for the often considered optimal levels. And if you have, let's say, subclinical low levels, then you should do something about it.
Why you should get on this course is because it's the most comprehensive one available on the market right now. It is 6 weeks condensed information about fatty acids, minerals, vitamins, and these polyphenols and everything you want to know about nutrients, micronutrients specifically, and how to use that to optimize your diet. So whatever that diet is, a vegan diet, carnivore, omnivore, whatever keto you're doing, you will learn a ton from this guide. So you don't need to go searching around and have all these questions in your mind. You get all of them here. If you're interested in longevity, if you're interested in optimizing your current nutritional status, that's probably the best place to start from. But with that, thank you very much, Olli, for this excellent comprehensive presentation. Stay nutrient dense.
Stay optimized.